think a lot of people know what wholesaling is, or at least have an idea about what wholesaling is. I want to really dig deep, tell you exactly what is wholesaling, how it works, what's involved, so you have an understanding of what wholesaling, selling houses, buying houses, or even assigning contracts. I had no idea what wholesaling was when I first got into the online real estate investing world, and I've been in real estate for 10 years. So I imagine many of you aren't quite sure what wholesaling is either. So we'll go through all of that, try and give you the ins and outs of it, positives, negatives, how you can get started if you want to, and what to expect if you do get started trying to wholesale, or at least you'll know what people are talking about when they mention wholesaling a house or apartment building. What is wholesaling? Basically, wholesaling real estate is buying a house or getting a house under contract, and then either selling the house or assigning that contract without doing any work to the property as quickly as you can. So a wholesaler is not a rehabber. He's not a flipper. He's not going in there making repairs. He is getting the house bought as cheap as possible, selling it most likely to another investor, and then taking a profit, moving on to the next deal. He wants in and out as quick as possible, and really he's not trying to flip it, not trying to make maximum profit. He's trying to work as quickly as he can. Now, why would someone want to wholesale? Well, for starters, it is probably the easiest way to get started in real estate without much money. Now, you're still going to need some money. There's really no way to invest in real estate with no money. I mean, you've got to have something for marketing, for expenses that pop up. But it's pretty minimal to start in wholesaling, and you can do it for very cheap depending on how you go about it. You can send out letters. You can drive for dollars. Many different things we'll get into that cost very little. Postage maybe, some marketing dollars. You'll have some closing costs possibly when you are selling the properties, but really it's pretty minimal compared to buying a rental property with 20% down, or fix and flipping a house that takes $25,000 in rehab plus the carrying costs and everything else involved. And it's not just for people looking to get started either. We've interviewed a couple people, Mark Scouron, who is wholesaling 5 to 15 houses every month and making over $5,000 on each deal. He's built an extremely profitable business out of wholesaling, and he has moved on to some flipping now, but for the most part, he has no reason to go from wholesaling to something else because he makes so much money wholesaling. I know a couple other investors in Texas who do the same thing. Sean Terry, who you may be familiar with, does the same thing with wholesaling. There are many guys out there making a lot of money just wholesaling real estate. So if you hear that wholesaling is just for beginners, it's just a poor man's way to invest in real estate, that's not really true. There's a lot of guys out there making a lot of money and being very successful at wholesaling. All right, one thing to be very careful with before we get into this too much more is the laws and regulations regarding wholesaling. Now, they're different for each state. Always research those before you enter into any kind of real estate business, of course. But the biggest thing I see is wholesalers trying to put a buyer and seller together without being part of the deal. So if you're out there, you find a seller who wants to sell their house, you go out, find a cash buyer, like, hey, I'll take a small fee, get you guys together, you guys can work out the deal on the contract. If you're not a licensed real estate agent, that's going to be illegal. You are practicing real estate without a license if you're putting together a buyer and a seller and you are not part of the contract or buying the house yourself. So you can't just go out there trying to put together two parties and let them do the contract themselves. You have to either have the house under contract yourself and then assign that contract, or you have to buy the house and then sell it. That's the only way you can legally wholesale without having a real estate license. If you have a real estate license, then you're simply acting as a realtor by putting a buyer and seller together, and you help them with the contract, the buying process, selling process, all of that. All right, so when you're doing an assignment of contract, basically what happens is a wholesaler will find a seller who's most likely motivated, want to sell their house for cheap for some reason, and they will have the seller sign a contract saying, I will sell the wholesaler my house for $50,000. It's usually a short couple-page contract that wholesalers will use, very simple. No real estate commissions involved, no realtors involved. There should be a title company or an attorney who handles the actual closing. So there will be some fees, the wholesaler might have to pay or the seller might have to pay depending on how it's structured. Usually the wholesaler, won't require any repairs to be made by the seller. They're buying the house as is and quick closing. Once the wholesaler gets that house under contract, they will make sure their contract they're using is assignable, which means they can assign it to another party without the seller's permission. So the wholesaler can go shop that contract to buyers they may have, cash buyers usually who are investors themselves, say, hey, I've got this contract on this house. I'd be willing to sell you this house for $55,000. So if the wholesaler bought it for $50,000, they're going to the end investor saying, hey, I'll sign his contract for $55,000. The wholesaler takes a $5,000 profit on the deal, less any costs they might have. Now, the reason the investor would do this, the end investor who's paying cash for the property, is because the really good wholesalers, the one who are doing a lot of business, are getting very good deals. And that investor paying $55,000 for that property probably could not find a similar property on the MLS or on the market that cheap. And that's the advantage of using a wholesaler, is they've got great deals. There's no real estate agents involved. So many times you're paying less commissions, less fees, and you can get properties cheaper than if you're buying them from the MLS. So that's how you would assign a contract. Things to watch out for. If you're trying to wholesale properties from the MLS, we'll talk about that here soon. Banks, HUD homes, usually short sales cannot be assigned. You have to use the bank's contracts. The HUD contract specifically states the contracts cannot be assigned. There's no way you can assign those contracts. You would have to buy the house, then sell it, which we'll talk about now. The second way most wholesalers will buy and sell properties is they will actually get a contract on the house, just like we stated, and then they'll buy the house and then sell it extremely quickly. Many times the wholesalers will use a double close so they don't have to use their own money, their own financing to do the deal. Now, a double close is a little tricky. It can be very confusing to people who are, in the business, and it can be very confusing even to title companies and real estate agents who are not used to what a double close is and how it works. Basically, the seller of the house will have a contract to sell the house to the wholesaler. The wholesaler will then enter into a contract to sell the house to the buyer, the end buyer, the investor with cash, on the same day. So the seller may sell the house to the wholesaler at 10 a.m. At 11 a.m., the investor comes in and the wholesaler sells the house to the end investor, at 11 a.m. Some title companies who are familiar with this practice will take the money from the end investor who's paying cash, the $55,000, and they will use that to pay the first seller who is selling the house for $50,000. So in that case of a double close on the same day, the wholesaler does not have to bring their own money. They aren't actually paying for the house themselves. The end investor is paying the original seller. So that's a little tricky, a little confusing. Most title companies will not do double closes, but there are some who will. Again, always check your laws, legal status of being able to do this, but most states, most wholesalers I've talked to do double closes quite a bit, don't have an issue with it. That's another way. You could buy HUD homes, you could buy REOs, close them on the same day using an investor's money, not your own, to buy the property, then sell it very quickly. Another way some wholesalers work is they will have their own money. Many of them I talk to, I've done podcasts with, they'll say, my intention is to wholesale this house. I believe I can sell it for, more than I bought it for very quickly. However, if something goes wrong, if I've done my figures wrong, if something pops up with the house, I fully intend to buy it myself, and flip it, use it as a rental, whatever, hold on to it however long they have to, because they made a contract with the seller, they want to honor their contract. They're not just trying to make a quick buck, get in, get out with no money of their own. They've built up their business where they have the cash or they have the financing to buy these properties if they have to. So you can wholesale using your own money, obviously. You could use cash, financing, buy the property. In those cases, you don't have to do a double close the same day. You could wait a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, a month, who knows how long it takes to sell the property. And that's another way to wholesale. One other new term I'll speak on quickly has just popped up, wholetailing. So this is a little different. It's not quite selling a property without doing any repairs at all. But this is where you buy the property. Maybe the house has a bad foundation. Maybe it has a mold problem, some major physical flaw, material defect in the home that is causing the value to be much lower than if the home were in good shape. A wholesaler or a rehabber might go in there, fix that major issue, and that's it. So let's say the house needs carpet, paint, windows, doors, all kinds of different things, but the foundation is bad, so nobody will touch it because they know the foundation's bad. Rehabber might go in there, fix the foundation, get that done, not do any of the other work, leave that for another investor, and then sell the property by fixing that major flaw so it doesn't scare everybody off. So that's the wholetailing, kind of doing partial repairs or just enough repairs to get a property in better condition to sell so you can make your money, get out somewhat quickly, but you're not spending months on a huge rehab. Maybe you're just spending a couple weeks on a minor rehab. All right, so that's the basics on wholesaling, a little bit on wholetailing. How do wholesalers find deals? I mean, that's really the key to a good wholesaler, is finding awesome deals that other investors cannot find themselves. Because really, what's the point of buying houses if anybody could go out there and buy a house for the same price? There's no reason for them to use a wholesaler. They'd use real estate agents. They'd use the MLS. Much easier to do. You don't need cash, and usually it's considered safer by most buyers. However, if you can get a property 10, 20% less than you can on MLS, that's where wholesalers have their advantage. So wholesalers do use the MLS. I've seen that some. It's tougher, definitely tougher than doing direct marketing, which we'll talk about. But so, wholesaling from the MLS is pretty self-explanatory. You find properties on the MLS, good deals, or maybe you're making low offers on properties, getting them under contract at a price that you think is a good deal, and turning around, trying to wholesale those properties to your investors, maybe even wholesaling on MLS, but that's a little tougher because you're paying commissions, fees, and people will see the house was just listed on MLS. And many people are turned off by the idea of wholesaling on MLS or buying a wholesale property that was bought from the MLS, because they figure, oh, if it's on MLS, I can buy anything on MLS. Why would I buy that property from you? And I understand their point, but I mean, it all comes down to, once you have a house under contract, if you get a house from the MLS, it's under contract. No one else can buy it at that point if you follow through on your contract. So technically, yes, they could have bought the house from the MLS, but they didn't. You have it under contract. You have the right to assign that contract possibly, or sell the house after you buy it. The person can't undermine your contract and offer the seller more money after it's signed. So while the investor who is a little put off by buying a wholesale property from the MLS can say, yeah, I could get that deal on MLS, the truth is they didn't. It's not available. And if it really is a really great deal, then who cares where the property was originally bought from? What I care about is, can I still make money with it? Is it still a good deal? Is it better than anything else I can get on MLS right now? So it is definitely tougher on MLS because you have to overcome that mindset. And unless you're really finding just needle in the haystack properties or making low offers that are getting accepted, it is going to be hard to get those really great deals from the MLS, especially when other investors can see the MLS. They can buy those properties too before you get a chance at them. But it's possible. The second main way wholesalers will get their deals is direct marketing. So I just wrote an article about how to market to sellers directly, motivated sellers. And basically what you're doing is You're trying to find houses, property owners who do not have their house listed for sale, but who may be motivated to sell. You're trying to get in contact with them, make them an offer, buy their house for less than market value for whatever reason. But many people kind of give real estate investors a bad name because of the direct marketing, because of buying properties off market. It's kind of seen as, well, you're stealing money from little old ladies, buying their properties for 50 cents on the dollar. And I know there is some of that goes on. There's some bad apples out there who give other investors, a bad name. But the bottom line is some people just don't want to sell their house on the MLS. I've met a few of them for whatever reason. They're embarrassed by the condition. They don't want people to show it. I had that happen with an estate where a gentleman's mother was living there, had not cleaned for many, many, many years. House was just a mess. He didn't want anybody to know it's for sale. He didn't want anybody to know anything about it. He just wanted it sold quietly and quickly, and we came to a deal. Other people, might need cash very, very fast, 15 days. Sometimes a wholesaler can get that done very quickly, get that bought right away. Where putting on MLS takes more time. You've got a better chance of the contract falling through, inspection issues, appraisal issues, etc., that the good wholesalers will not deal with. Some properties have major flaws, foundations, just major repairs, and really they're not going to get that much money on the MLS because they'd be selling it to a fix and flipper anyway than they would selling it directly to a wholesaler, directly to an investor without those real estate commissions. And there's some cases where people just give up. They don't even want to go to the effort of finding an agent. They don't want to list it. They just want to be done with it as quickly as possible, take it off my hands, and be done. So there are cases where people want to sell their house without getting the most money they can. I do some direct marketing. I have bought houses off market. I'm a real estate agent, so I always have to disclose that. I also disclose I'm buying the property below market value and I may make a profit from it. I always have that signed in writing by the seller so there's no misunderstanding. But really, when you explain to the seller, there's no real estate commissions, no fix-up costs, you don't have to worry about appraisal, all of those things, if they're really motivated, if they don't want the house listed, then they're usually fine selling the house below market value. They see why they're getting less than they would on MLS. It makes sense if you explain it right and you're not trying to just really rip them off. We always try and give them as fair an offer as we can so that we're protected to make money and then we're not just, stealing from them as well. So finding these sellers is the really tricky part, where you're going to spend your money, where it's going to take time, and where most of your time and effort is going to go. There's a few ways to do it. Direct mail is one way that we do it. We'll send letters out to absentee owners, send letters out to inherited properties, the pre-foreclosure list sometimes, and sometimes to vacant properties. So we just send a letter that says, hey, basically, we buy properties for cash, or I buy properties for cash. I buy properties in northern Colorado. I have rental properties, fix and flips. There's a few different letters we use. But it just says, close quickly, no real estate agent commissions, no closing costs, no repairs need to be done. I'd love to talk to you about the possibility of buying your house. Give me a call or check out my website. We do actually get pretty decent response. We can get our lists from a company that provides inherited lists, or List Source provides absentee owners. We've bought a few houses that way and also listed quite a few houses that way because we're real estate agents. I can give people the option of, hey, you can sell your house to me now, no repairs, no MLS, no worrying about anything for this much. Or if your main motivation is money, you want more money, we can list the house for you for this much. This is how much it'll cost. This is what the cost will be. Here's what you'll get out of listing the home. If the house is in decent shape, they're going to make more money listing it in most cases. If the house is really, really bad, then sometimes we're pretty close about what it'll get listing it to what we can pay for it as a rehab project. So those letters get sent out. There's a great company, actually, who will do all your direct marketing for you as far as mailings. They make the letters, they source lists, they do everything for you. got a link to the blog post for that. If you're interested in them, it's yellowletters.com. And if you use my promo code, you can get a 10% discount. So check that out. Invest for More is a promo code, but it's also on the blog page here. Another way to market bandit signs. Well, bandit signs are those little signs you'll see on street corners that say, "We buy houses for cash," or I've seen, "We buy moldy houses," or, "We buy fire damaged houses." Just, they're trying to get the attention of people who have a house to sell. They want to get rid of it ASAP. Those signs can do okay. I've heard of many people who do great with those signs. I've heard of some people who get absolutely no response to those signs. It's just something you have to try out. I don't use them because as an agent, there is some confusion as to whether I have to put my real estate company name and number and all that on there. So I just don't do bandit signs. It's easier that way. And from what I've heard in my area, I've talked to a number of investors and nobody's really getting deals from those bandit signs. So, that doesn't mean they don't work, but that's just what I've been hearing in my area. Billboards, you see the "We Buy Ugly Houses" guys, "We Buy Cash Houses" on those big billboards. Usually they're trying to find off-market sellers to wholesale or flip. When you're doing this direct marketing, you don't have to wholesale the property. You can buy it as a rental property. You can buy it as a flip. Buy it as your own personal residence if you want. This is how many wholesalers find their deals, is by direct marketing. Websites. So we talked to Danny Johnson last week, and he talked about how he built his website to find motivated sellers. He sends them there through his direct mailing. And also, he's built his website so that people searching online for how to sell their house quickly, how to get rid of it, will find his website in their area. And then he gets direct leads without having to send out mailings, have to call anybody. They just come right in. So that's a fantastic way to drive business in. I've got a link to Danny's program as well in the blog post. And then driving for dollars is another great way to find properties. Simply drive around the areas you want to buy in, look for vacant houses or houses that are just, look like they've been neglected for a long time. Write down the address. Try to figure out who the owner is, look through public records, try and send them a letter. If you can find their phone number, try and call them, contact them, say, "Hey, I know you own this house, it's vacant. Are you interested in selling it?" Just start talking to them. It just takes experience and a few times talking to motivated sellers before you realize you just need to talk to them, just get the conversation rolling, and you can tell how motivated they are, if it's a possible lead or not. You will find many of the people who call you back on the direct mail, on some of the bandit signs, they're not really motivated sellers. They're sellers looking to get full retail value without paying a real estate commission. So they're not really the people you want. The people you want are the ones who want out quickly, or have houses that really need work. And that's where you'll find the good deals. Once you've found these deals, you can write a contract, get the house under contract, you're negotiating. You have to find your buyers. So most wholesalers don't just take these and list them on MLS, because then they have to pay a real estate agent. They lose a bunch of their profit. And it can be, you can't list a house on MLS if you just have a contract on it. You have to own the house to list on MLS. So if you're assigning contracts, you can't even list them on the MLS. And you have to wait till you buy the home to list it on MLS if you do buy it. So you can't really do a double close. You can't do the assignment of contract if you're listing houses on MLS. That means the wholesaler has to find their own buyers, have their own buyers list. Just as important as being able to find good deals is having good cash buyers. So the first thing you need to know is, obviously, how much will your cash buyers pay for properties? So if you're getting houses, that are worth $100,000, you're getting them under contract for $90,000, and you're trying to market them to investors as being a great deal because it's $95,000 and it's worth $100,000, you're not going to do any wholesale deals. All right, there's probably no investor out there who wants to buy a wholesale house for $5,000 less than market. They want good deals. If you're flipping, you're going to want things at least 70% of market value. And then if they need a lot of work, it's going to have to be less than that. Rental property owners are going to want to see great cash flow. They're going to want to buy them well below market value. There's really no motivation for an investor to buy a wholesale deal if it's 5 or even 10% below market. Usually they're looking at 15, 20% or more below market value, depending on how much work is needed, depending on what their end goal is. So finding those investors is key, and knowing how much they'll pay is key, because if you got properties overpriced, you're never going to sell it no matter how many buyers you have on your list. Finding buyers, really searching for cash buyers is the key. There's many ways you can do it. You can go to auction sales, trustee sales. Usually those are cash buyers. Start talking to people. Look at public records. Look at the most recent sales in your area. Who is buying for cash? Now you can search through all the records to see that. Sometimes you can search through MLS to see who the cash buyers are. There's also some programs available called skip tracing, which will automatically do that for you. They can be kind of expensive, and honestly, I've never tried them out myself, so I can't recommend any. But there is an option there to kind of save you time from skimming through every single sale. All right, so once you've got your buyers list, you got a house under contract, then you can market the property to your buyers, see who's interested. If they're buying them, obviously, you've got good deals, they're in demand, keep doing what you're doing. If your buyers aren't buying them, either they're not good enough deals, they're not priced low enough, or your buyers aren't real cash buyers. Maybe they're looky-loos, maybe they said they're real buyers, but they aren't really buying or buying in your area. All right, so many people talk about getting started in real estate by wholesaling. That's the best way to start, best way to get going. When I first learned about wholesaling, I thought, man, that's a lot of work. Doesn't seem like a very good way to invest in real estate. Doesn't seem like that great of a way to get started. And honestly, I was wrong in the beginning because I didn't understand how wholesaling worked. I didn't understand all there was to it and how people were finding their deals, finding their buyers, etc. But I think wholesaling is actually a really, really good way to get started in the business, especially if you don't have much money, because you can market really using your time, driving for dollars, sending out letters. It's going to cost you some money, but it's not going to be super expensive. And it's going to teach you some awesome skills along the way. If you can find a way to get great deals that other buyers can't in your market, I mean, you're always going to have a valuable commodity. You're always going to have real estate that you can sell, that you can buy yourself and flip, that you can use as rental properties. You're going to be able to make money if you can find deals, and that's what it comes down to. Learning how to do that is just a key, and it takes time and experience. It's not going to happen overnight. So the sooner you can get started and the sooner you can just get some experience doing these things, the better off you're going to be. Talking to sellers, the same thing. It just takes experience. You're going to fail. I mean, I shouldn't say fail, but you're not going to have people buying from you all the time or selling to you all the time. You're going to have a lot of people who say no. And you just have to learn to deal with it, learn how to talk to people the best you can, and gain experience and just get better and better. And then, even as you progress into more success, some people will use wholesaling and change from selling those properties to other investors to flipping them themselves if they're good enough deals. Some wholesalers will continue to wholesale most of their properties and maybe cherry pick the ones that can make the most money on flipping. Some will just keep wholesaling over and over again all day long. The one problem I have with that is it is a job. You're not building any long-term wealth, or if you're just wholesaling everything and you're not keeping any rentals or you're not investing in something. I think that's about it for wholesaling. The keys are really finding the deals. If you can find great deals, that's a key to any type of real estate investing. That's where the money's made. Finding great buyers, that can be tricky, but if you can find great buyers who will pay in cash, that is a key to your business. And one thing I didn't touch on, now I think about it, why do the buyers have to pay cash? Why can't they use financing? Well, if you're going to be wholesaling properties using an assignment of contract, you're probably going to have, 30, maybe 45 days at the most to find a buyer to assign that contract. And that's the absolute most. So usually these end investors are going to have 10, 15 days to close. That's not enough time to get financing. Usually they've got to have cash, a line of credit, some way to buy the property very quickly with an assignment. Secondly, many banks don't want to see that assignment of contract. They won't even loan on that type of contract. They'll want to see a full state contract, made up by a realtor to finance the property. Now, if you're doing a double close, obviously that buyer is buying the house the same day as you buy it. There's no way they can't have another contract on the house before you bought it. They've got to have cash that same day ready to go. There's no way they can finance it. So you really have to find buyers with cash, not just investor buyers who can put 20% down or 25% down. You need cash buyers when you're wholesaling. Wholesaling is not as bad as many people make it out to be. Yes, it's a lot of work, but so is anything that's worthwhile. So is anything investing if you want to make money. I've got a couple